Good morning, everyone. I've just started the webinar, so I'm going to give people the opportunity to join us. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our July webinar. For those who don't know me, I'm Emma O'Connor. I'm a legal director in the employment team here at Boyce Turner, and I also head up our HR Training Academy. As you know, I like to bring you different voices, different topics, and things that maybe you're curious about or you are thinking about and want to know more. And I think that one of those topics is apprenticeships. And I am thrilled to be joined on this webinar today by Kim Powell, who's Business Director at Damar Training. Kim, good morning and welcome.
Good morning, Emma. Thank you for inviting me.
Very welcome. Great to have you. So, for those of you who don't know, as you know, Boyce Turner is a law firm. We are based in Reading in the Thames Valley, but we service clients with their commercial needs across the UK, Europe, and globally. And here in the employment team, we assist clients with their HR needs, their day-to-day HR queries, litigation support, as well as a thriving business immigration team. And in the training corner in the HR Training Academy, we're running training courses for managers, HR teams, and wider employee populations. Popular course in the last couple of months has been looking at manager fundamentals. So back to basics. What do managers need to do, those skills to be able to run those ER processes that I know HR pull their hair out, getting them to run investigations, etc. So if that's of interest to you, then do get in touch. And Kim, we met each other by chance on LinkedIn, didn't we?
We did.
And I rather caught you out because I think you linked in with me for a completely different reason. Yeah. And I said, oh, I've been thinking about doing something on apprenticeships and bringing our audience some information about apprenticeships. And I sort of, twisted your arm to come and join me, which is fantastic. And that's how sometimes these chance meetings turn into something more. So please do tell us about Damar.
Okay, Emma, my slides aren't moving from what I'm seeing.
Okay.
Are you sharing slides? Because
yes, I am.
Okay, I'm not seeing the slides.
Okay. All right, I will stop sharing and I will share again. I'll try again. In the meantime, if you tell us about Damar, that would be great.
Okay, so Damar, we're an apprenticeship training provider, over 40 years established, and we provide business and professional service apprenticeships. We are Ofsted inspected as a good provider. We've just gone through an inspection in March, so that was all very stressful, but we're good, and really proud of that. I've been with the business for about 5 years now, and I work with lots of different sorts of employers, so from one-man bands through to multinational organisations. We have over 1,000 apprentices currently in training with us, and we work with over 300 different employers. As I said, that's small organisations, that's public sector organisations, NHS trusts, as I said, big organisations like ITV, for example, and our training delivery is face-to-face delivery like this over Zoom or Teams, but digital delivery. So 40 years heritage and 11 different apprenticeship standards that we offer.
Wow, thank you very much indeed. Thank you for that. And hopefully everyone is all good with the slides. So what is it I want to quiz Kim on today? Well, really today is about an overview. I'm not going to be talking about any kind of legal aspects to do with recruiting apprenticeships or contracts and contracts of employment and terminations and things like that. What I really want to do is to ask Kim about those kind of, what things you should be considering You know, we talk about apprenticeships. I know that certainly school leavers are much more interested and open to hearing about apprenticeships. And so really it's about finding out what businesses can do, how they can support those individuals on apprenticeships, and really those practical points and options available. So again, if anybody's got any legal issues, then we can pick that up after the session. Today is really that kind of practical overview. And for those who know nothing about what an apprenticeship is, then, you know, the first thing we will be covering is what is an apprenticeship. So that's good, thumbs up. Next, I want to talk about the apprenticeship levy, because I know when this was brought in, there are lots of sort of, you know, oh my goodness, what is this? And also, you know, there are probably businesses out there who are paying the apprenticeship levy and aren't actually getting any benefit from it or using it to the best way that they can be. Then I want to ask Kim certainly about what apprenticeships that Damar offer, but more generally, you know, what sorts of apprenticeships are there? And then Kim is going to share with us some employer and some apprenticeship case studies and some examples as well, to hopefully give you some help and support in your planning, in your recruitment planning in particular. And then, as I said, we will deal with questions at the end, but if you want to pop something in the Q&A, and I can ask him as we're going through as well, so please do that. So Kim, let's go really into sort of the back to basics, which is, what is an apprenticeship?
Okay, so an apprenticeship is it's a government scheme, but apprenticeships were actually written by employers, so hopefully they're more fit for purpose than perhaps the older style apprenticeships used to be. Back in the old days of NVQs, the government took the decision that, you know, they probably shouldn't be writing apprenticeships and employers should. So now apprenticeships are written by a group of employers who will get together and decide what knowledge, skills and behaviours they want their employees to have. So an apprenticeship is really a blend of knowledge, skills and behaviours. So basically everything that the apprentice learns in the apprenticeship, they are then putting that into practice in their work. So it's really important that the apprenticeship matches the job role. As you can imagine, Emma, if you're a vet nurse, there's no point you doing a paralegal apprenticeship, because you're not going to be able to put those things into practice. So throughout the programme, an apprentice goes through a period of what we call on-programme learning. So they'll be supported by a coach who they meet every 6 weeks, like this on Teams. And between that 6 weeks of meeting their coach, they'll be working through various pieces of knowledge that they'll be learning through our open learning website, other websites we might direct them to for content. They'll join group sessions with other students so that they can, you know, discuss in a wider sort of peer-to-peer learning opportunity, and they'll work through the whole apprenticeship like in that way until they get to the point where they've finished all the learning and us and the apprentice and the employer agree that they're competent, and then they will go through the end point assessment. So it's a little bit like learning to drive, if you like. You go through the lessons with us, nice friendly lessons, and then some scary bloke sits in the car and does the end point assessment with you. But that's the part where basically all the learning that you've undertaken is put into practice, and you're proving your competence in that particular apprenticeship. And obviously, you know, the benefits of apprenticeship is, you know, improves your chance of career progression and you know, building that competence in your workplace.
So it is that mixture of being on the job as well as doing, you know, the opportunity to learn in, you know, virtual classrooms or actual classrooms, etc., whatever it is, the type of apprenticeship scheme that you're on.
Yeah, absolutely. So some of the knowledge will involve expert knowledge tutors depending on the apprenticeship. So yeah, it's a really nice blend of, you know, one-to-one coaching, group sessions with other students for some peer-to-peer learning, and that self-directed learning. So knowing, you know, the bits of knowledge that you need to get through websites and other content.
Perfect, thank you. Now, the apprenticeship levy was brought in, wasn't it? You know, well, probably what, 8-10 years ago now. I seem to remember it coming out, and it kind of being a bit of a kind of a, oh, you know, another kind of, you know, tax on employers. obviously, you know, employers of a certain size, of course. But could you just give us an idea about what the apprenticeship levy is and what it was designed to do?
So the government introduced this as a way of employers having a pot of money that they can spend on apprenticeships to develop their staff and to encourage employers to use and utilise apprenticeships more. So the levy is only payable by employers who have a pay bill, a salary payroll bill of 3 million a year, and it will be taken and put into that pot at source. So like employers will, take it NI, and it will be put in this pot that can only be used for apprenticeships.
A collective pot. So is that all the employers who have a payroll of over 3 million? They each pay 5%. It's like a collective pot.
It's into their own pot.
Oh, okay.
So it's an individual pot of money that's used for your employees, and obviously, and it will fluctuate because obviously payroll will fluctuate. So some months you'll be putting more money into that pot than other months. But the payments for apprenticeships will leave that account on a monthly basis. So the cost of the whole apprenticeship will be divvied up into monthly chunks, and that will be drawn down from the apprenticeship levy pot, if that makes sense.
So that pot, you can use it, against your existing staff, but can you also use that for new staff as well? So if you're wishing to specifically recruit apprentices.
Absolutely. And I think that's quite a myth that sometimes apprenticeships are still seen as only for young people. But actually, apprenticeships more and more now, employers are seeing the benefit of using apprenticeships to upskill their staff. They develop their staff, especially in this really tricky recruitment market. It's all about retention. And if you're not offering development, somebody else will. So it's a great way of hanging on to your staff and saying, we've earmarked you as somebody that we want to develop, and we want to do that through this apprenticeship. The funds can only be spent on training for English apprenticeships, so it's for people who work in England. The funding rules are slightly different for Scotland and Wales and Ireland, and the money will disappear out of the pot after 24 months if it's not used. So it really is key that employers, if they have this pot of money, that they should be spending it. But equally, if they're not able to spend it, and some of the bigger organisations physically can't, there's so much money in the pot, you can gift 25% of your levy funds to other employers. So if it was an SME who didn't have a levy pot, for example, you could gift that funding to somebody else to use. So there's, it's not just a case of the pot will go back to the government, Emily, unfortunately.
Right, okay.
Yes, sorry, I've skipped and saw that question there.
Yes. So that's it. What happens to that disappeared pot who's not gifted? Yes. No. Thank you, Emily. Good question.
Why it's essential to either spend it or try and gift it. Yes.
Yeah. How do you gift it?
So the apprenticeship levy pot is sort of managed through a digital account. So the employer will have access to that account, and basically a non-levy employer would also have an apprentice service account, and they would just link the two together so that the levy payer money will then basically go into the non-levy payer money account. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, good. So fine. So there is an incentive then on the non-levy, which we are going to come on to talk about. There is an incentive for those businesses that aren't caught by the levy rules to actually register, because there is some benefit that they can get. Yes,
yeah, it's quite an easy process. I can help people to sort that out, but there are a lot of
perfect.
So for example, the co-op are very good at gifting levy, and you can basically go onto their platform and apply to have some levy funds gifted to you. There are lots of bigger organisations that will do that, and consortiums of organisations who will put money together and will ask employers to apply for it.
And again, great PR that we don't hear about. That would be, people should be shouting that they do that, because it is so important to give people the opportunity to be able to have an apprenticeship scheme, whether that's a new recruit or an existing member of staff. So yeah, if you're not registered, then I think the message is
right. I think the whole gifting thing is probably not as publicised as it possibly should be.
Yeah, no, brilliant. Okay, well, so we've talked about obviously what so yes, I think the question is probably yes, but we've had a question in about, is the levy mandatory to pay by all employers? Well, I wouldn't say it's all employers there, Emily. It's obviously those employers who are caught by the £3 million wages bill. But I'm guessing, Kim, if you're caught by that and you meet that standard, then yes.
Yes, it will. Yes,
yeah.
It will automatically disappear. You won't have to do anything about it. I think your accounts go to your finance team and they'll be saying, where's this money gone?
Yeah, that'll be where it's gone. Yeah. There aren't any exceptions or anything, you know, I'm thinking kind of charities or anything like that. No. Okay. Yeah. So, you know, if that's the message, isn't it? If you're caught, you're caught. And, you know, use it, basically. Use it or lose it. Yes, exactly. Use it or lose it. So, Kim, what about those businesses that aren't caught by this, by the £3 million?
So that's your SME organisation.
Yeah.
So if you don't have a pay bill of 3 million, then it's good news, because the government will fund 95% of the cost of the funding of the the cost of the apprenticeship. So it means that actually, if you're an employer with under 50 staff, you wouldn't make any contribution. The government would pay the entire amount of the cost of the apprenticeship. But it means if you have more than 50 staff, you will pay the 5% contribution. But equally, for anybody who employs an apprentice who's 16 to 18, there's £1,000 government incentive. And also to mention that any apprentice who's aged 25 or under, the employer can claim back the national insurance contribution for that.
And that £1,000 for 16 to 18-year-olds and the national insurance kind of clawback, does that apply to all employers, not just SMEs?
Yes.
So I'm just going to ask you, just when you said about the government will pay 95% of the costs of the apprenticeship. Now, does that include wages?
No. It's the cost of the apprenticeship training. So as the apprenticeship training provider, apprenticeships all have different costs depending on what they are and how long they are and what level they are. But the cost of that apprenticeship training is an amount of money. If you're levy paying, that cost will come out of your levy account. If you're not, the government will pay 95% and you will pay just 5%, unless your student is 16 to 18. So it's quite a good opportunity, really, because you know, some of the apprentices, so for example, the business admin apprenticeship is £5,000. If you're a non-levy payer, that would cost you £250.
Yeah.
So it's a really great opportunity to bring on new students, you know, new talent, new blood to the business, but equally, as I mentioned, to upskill and develop the existing team.
No, that is really useful. And you know, we've got here some apprenticeships. I don't know whether you can kind of talk through the apprenticeships that are potentially on offer through yourselves or through others.
Yeah, so these are the apprenticeships that we offer. If you go onto the .gov site, you'll be able to see all the apprenticeships, and there are a lot. There's not a lot you can't do through an apprenticeship now. So we at Damar offer accounting apprenticeships. So those are really great because there's a nice progression. There's AAT level 2, level 3 and level 4. So from a retention point of view, it's brilliant that you can offer an opportunity to a new employee, a young person, and say, you know, stay with us. This is your pathway. We will develop you through all these apprenticeship standards. Business admin is a great apprenticeship for anybody who's entering business. And it will fit with lots of different roles. It's really, you know, it involves a really broad foundation in business, but also a bit of project management, a little bit of finance. So that's a really great one. Customer service is a level 2 apprenticeship. Again, a great entry level apprenticeship for people who are, you know, dealing with customers, obviously, but that can be over the phone, it can be face-to-face, it can be over email. A fairly new apprenticeship is the data protection and information governance apprenticeship. That's a new one that's been on with us just over a year now. Obviously, legal apprenticeships, which is how I connected with you, Emma. So we offer legal admin apprenticeships, the paralegal apprenticeship. There's also the solicitor apprenticeship, which is a level 7 apprenticeship. So, as I said, there are different levels. Customer service is level 2, solicitor is level 7, management apprenticeship. So there's a team leader, supervisor, which is great for people who are just new to management or perhaps have been promoted into that management role. So again, for upskilling, it's those people who, may have been part of the team but are now leading that team, and how they make that switch. There's also a level 5, which is an operations management. Then we offer medical admin, which is really popular with our NHS trusts. So we can embed some medical content into that, and also travel, which is obviously quite niche, but travel apprenticeships too. And there's all sorts. There's a police officer apprenticeship. There's a firefighter apprenticeship. There's lots of IT apprenticeships. There's probably not a lot that you couldn't find in terms of progression and development through apprenticeships, and more are still being added. So I would advise anybody, before they think about paying for commercial training, have a look at apprenticeships and see if there's something that you could utilize in that way instead.
Definitely. And just explain about the different levels of apprenticeship.
Okay. Yeah, so it's loose, because obviously you can't compare an apprenticeship to a GCSE or an A level, because it's very different. It's not just about knowledge, it's all about the skills and behaviours as well. But loosely, a level 2 apprenticeship is a GCSE sort of level equivalent. Level 3 is A levels. Level 4 is that foundation degree level, right up to level 7, which is equivalent to a master's. That's roughly how the progression would go. So the level 7 solicitor apprenticeship obviously is proven really popular, taken a while to get going, because law is quite a traditional thing, and I think lawyers have taken a while, but I think a lot of firms now are on board with students don't have to come from a red brick university, and I think also students are seeing that you don't have to go to uni for lots of roles now. An apprenticeship is a much safer way of getting in with an organisation, learning, growing, learning their ways, earning. So it really is now competing with universities in a lot of these areas.
So when you see things that say it's a degree apprenticeship, is that level sort of 6, or is there a specific degree apprenticeship that you do at university?
Yeah, some apprenticeships have qualifications embedded within them.
Okay.
Some apprenticeships, the apprenticeship is the qualification, if that makes sense. So for some solicitor apprenticeships, the law degree will be embedded as part of that level 7 apprenticeship. But for things like business admin, for example, the qualification is the business admin apprenticeship. For the accounting apprenticeships, there'll be AAT qualifications embedded within them. Again, with accounts, you can go further. So, you can do your ACCA, which is your chartered accountancy, which, is degree level, but that would be embedded within that apprenticeship.
I see. And in terms of the wages, are they fixed, or can they vary between organisations?
Yeah, they can vary. There's lots of minimum amounts of salary. So there's a minimum apprentice salary.
Yeah, there is obviously that within the sort of national minimum wage.
Exactly.
There is an apprenticeship.
There's a minimum wage for age. There's also then the national living wage. So in terms of, if you were to offer a new employee, somebody from school, college, an apprenticeship, you could look at those as a starting salary. But what lots of organisations do will basically, choose their own salary and how it fits with their existing team and where this person would fit. And I think you're going to get a better quality of person. Obviously, the more you pay for a young person, it's going to attract the better apprenticeship.
Yeah, we've had a couple of questions in, and I think probably I think with regards to, is there a site where you can see all approved apprenticeship training providers? I'm assuming probably the government website.
Yes.
Is probably the
go on
best.
with .gov, find an apprenticeship. You can basically search by apprenticeship. So if you wanted something in IT, it would bring up a whole list of IT apprenticeships. And then by the side, you can search for training providers that offer those.
And we just said, can you share the level and equivalent via a message? Yeah, I'm happy to put that in an email, and I can sort of share that with you. But of course, you do get in touch with Kim if you've got any questions. I think probably the question from Joe Hatton, I think I'll get Kim to sort of deal with that offline if that's all right, because I think that's quite an involved one that is sort of specific, so we'll cover that off separately. But that's really helpful, and I think you're right. I think there are so many opportunities out there now for young people, but also people in work, to gain the experiences that they need. And I do think that advice about, you know, look at apprenticeships first before necessarily going to look at, you know, what other training providers that there are out there, because you might find that you get that flexibility, you know, whilst being able to use either your own levy pot or that 95% funding. That's really quite attractive, I can imagine. So how can we use apprenticeships, Kim? How can we use them kind of effectively?
Yeah, so I think, as we said, the upskilling piece is really coming through now more and more.
Yeah.
I think, you know, there are so many people who can develop through apprenticeships. And as I said, with recruitment being so difficult, more and more people are looking at this as, you know, a way of retaining staff, and, you know, keeping them with their business, really. So I think it could be part of a, you know, a personal development plan, that you could talk to your employees and say, look, you know, look at the skills that you need, the skills gap. So this is the areas that we need you to develop in, and how can we utilize an apprenticeship to do that? So, you know, talk to us about the person that you're thinking about. We can then recommend, or, you know, your training provider could recommend the right apprenticeship standard. And then we would need to assess the skills gap, because in order for an apprenticeship to be valid and for it to be eligible, there needs to be a skills gap. There needs to be something for the student to learn from that apprenticeship. It's pointless doing an apprenticeship if you're already competent in all areas of that apprenticeship. So what we would do is just, you know, make sure that there was a skills gap necessary for the apprenticeship to be effective. And then we would onboard the student and enroll them, and obviously develop that capability through the meetings and the knowledge and the skills and behaviours. Probably something we also need to flag up is the off the job time. So there is a requirement for all apprenticeships, Emma, that a student has a minimum of 6 hours a week during their working week, where they are basically protected from their job and they are able to develop their skills through their apprenticeship. So that's something that employers should consider, but obviously the payback is they're going to get, you know, a more effective employee at the end of it.
Exactly.
That 6 hours a week is really flexible. I think, you know, when people, in the old days, when people went off to college for a day a week to study, that was, you know, quite difficult sometimes if that day was not a day that was suitable because of, you know, somebody was on holiday, somebody was off sick. But because the way that we deliver is digital, it means that students can, you know, split that time whenever fits the employer and them. So it could be 2 half days a week, it could be a whole day, and if that's, you know, if that suits everybody, that's absolutely fine. But there has to be that protected day a week where they are able to work on their apprenticeship, and they will log that time in a journal, so that, you know, again, they can reflect on their learning. But then obviously the other flip side of apprenticeships is bringing in a brand new apprentice. So, you know, you've got a role you want to fill, perhaps look at that role and think if it could be filled by an apprentice. So we'd be able to discuss with you the job role and, you know, the skills that you require for that role, and recommend the right apprenticeship that would fit. We have a recruitment team. It's a free service. So we have a team who just recruit apprentices, and they're really experienced in that, because I think also recruiting apprentices is quite different to recruiting experienced people. And the things you're looking for and the questions you're asking are going to be slightly different. So, you know, we will be able to advertise again on relevant job sites that you might not be looking at. So we can advertise on the .gov website, but also a platform called Get My First Job, which, as the name suggests, is for those people who are looking at, you know, for that first role. You know, we can support with that whole recruitment piece. We will shortlist and, you know, send candidates over for you to interview, and then support with that whole onboarding and enrolling piece. But again, it's, you know, it's developing capability for brand new employees and, you know, starting their journey with you as an employer through an apprenticeship scheme. So you know, there's definitely two ways to look at this, and I think the word apprenticeships often still conjures up, you know, young people, carpenters, electricians, and you know, it's not like that now. There are so many professional apprenticeships that can develop skills too. And again, for your existing staff, as you know, I've taken on a lady in her 60s to do a paralegal apprenticeship who had a total change of direction. She was doing her books for her husband's building business, local family high streets, you know, firm of solicitors. She went to work for them. She wanted to progress. They put her on the paralegal apprenticeship. So there really is, you know, it will suit lots of different people.
Yeah, I think you're right. And I think there is this sort of, you know, there is this called a shift as well. And I think you touched upon it, that, you know, you don't necessarily have to go to university. And I think there is, you know, this sort of shift around this kind of diversity of background as well. And that actually kind of encouraging people who have, you know, come through the ranks in a different way and approach things, you know, looking at things maybe about how you can gain experience and kind of qualifications at the same time. I think that can actually add value in so many other ways, not just skills, capability, experience, but just this idea that, you know, you're approaching things, the way that you approach a problem. It's not, it kind of avoids sort of, you know, sometimes can avoid the kind of group think that you can sometimes see in organizations where you're kind of effectively recruiting people in the same image. You know, they've all been to X university, they've all done Y post-grad, they've all done, you know, so I think it can kind of add to that, you know, the sort of the wonderful diversity that we want our workplaces to be. So I think there is that also adds to the whole apprenticeship.
Absolutely. And from, you know, the social mobility aspect as well, it's so strong.
Yes,
it really opens the door to people who, you know, probably thought they could never achieve through a university, or, you know, didn't have the right qualifications. But, you know, not everybody learns the same way, and actually the qualifications you can gain through the apprenticeship route is very different to going to university and, you know, coming out with a piece of paper. But do these people know how to talk to clients? Do they know how to, you know, communicate effectively? So yeah, it's a different way of learning. So,
but you can do that as well, because you can look for something that is that sort of, you know, level 6, level 7, or as you said, has the qualification embedded within the apprenticeship, so you can still achieve the, you know, degree, LLB in the case of law, as well as have, you know, the whole other kind of, you know, characteristics of the role and personal specifications that employers are looking for. So I think it can give you that as well. And I can see huge benefits of people looking at apprenticeships as another option, as another, you know, path as well. So we've got some sort of case studies, Kim, there. I wonder if you wanted to just sort of share those with us.
Yeah, so I think you're going to share this page, and, you know,
I will do. Yeah,
and click on those and read those case studies. But Lily Iris Accounting is one of my organisations. Those are the ladies there. The lady on the far right, it's her business, and she has an apprentice at all levels of accounts. So a level 2, a level 3, and a level 4. It's a very small business. There's only 6, 7 of them, but she's absolutely seeing the benefit of, you know, growing her team that way. And, you know, those girls are all going to progress right through the sort of ranks. Keogh's a large law firm. We have just starting a cohort of 12 level 7 postgrad solicitor apprenticeships with them. So they're really seeing the benefit. They've got quite a large levy pot, as you would imagine. So that, you know, they're utilising that. HCC again, we have level 7 solicitor apprenticeships with them. And then there's some student case studies there about, you know, I think they're really powerful people who are, you know, have actually done it, come through and can show and talk about the benefits that, you know, they've seen through utilising the apprenticeship route. And, you know, some of them have said, you know, I thought about university, now I'm so glad I didn't do it. And you know, it's not right for everybody. Obviously, some people want that
No.
whole uni life, but you know, if you have an apprenticeship, you can still have a great life because you've got money to spend.
Yeah, exactly.
As well.
Exactly. And I think attitudes will shift as well, in terms of, you know, what it is to be an apprentice, and what it gives you. And I think, you know, there is a lot to be done, I think, particularly in certain sectors, around you know, looking at apprenticeships and seeing the value of them. But I think it's only if people try them that actually, you know, perceptions will change. We've had a couple of questions here that I think we can kind of deal with. I think the point about as apprenticeships are also for existing employees with long service, I guess the minimum salaries does not apply to them. No, it wouldn't. It wouldn't, and because obviously they would be already on a contract of employment, they're already part of your business. You are offering them the opportunity to you know, enhance their skills, you know, on top of what they're already doing. So, you know, whilst you might agree something with the employee, particularly around, you know, maybe what it looks like for them, hours, success, etc., I think, you know, you wouldn't then be sort of putting somebody's salary back to the apprenticeship rate, and that's not going to work. Just around the kind of the course fee thing. So I'm assuming with apprenticeships, if an employee decides that they don't want to do it, or they haven't passed the course, I'm not talking about anything, you know, that might interrupt you know, pregnancy, illness, etc. But if really somebody starts it in 6 months and just goes, this really is not for me, what would be the situation there with regards sort of paying back, or what happens?
So because we draw the money from the levy account, or in the case of a non-levy organisation, through their apprentice service account, which is being funded by the government, we draw it monthly. So the point that the student stops, we would stop drawing down those funds.
And it doesn't have to be repaid or anything like that? No.
So in the case of an apprenticeship, an employer cannot reclaim any costs back through the apprentice. So things like resits, so first sits of all exams will be included within the apprenticeship cost. Any resits the employer would need to be responsible for, and they couldn't claim that back from the student.
Okay, no, that's really helpful. We've had a question about, obviously, how do you quality assess the types of apprentice schemes? Is there a way that they are quality assured?
I suppose because they're written by employers, you know, they're tried and tested by, and it's a really diverse group of employers that will come together and put the apprenticeship standards together. So there'll be big companies, small, you know, government funded PLCs, limited companies, they'll all have an input into what that apprenticeship standard looks like. And I said, if you go onto the government website, all the apprenticeship standards are there, and it will explain to you what the knowledge, skills and behaviours are. So yeah, I think that it's pretty stringent.
Yeah. And what's the typical off job? So what's the typical split between working and either face-to-face or virtual classroom?
So as I said, the off the job times, this protected day a week where a student is working on their apprenticeship is what we need. So effectively they'd be in their paid job for 4 days, but on their apprenticeship for 1 day, although they still need to be paid for 5. Does that make sense? You can't deduct a day's pay because they're working on their apprenticeship. As I said, they'll access various websites and content for knowledge. They'll meet with their coach every 6 weeks. We also have a forum, so they can post questions on that forum. And obviously then there'll also be the opportunity to put what they're learning into practice in the workplace, because usually for the endpoint assessment, they'll be building a portfolio of evidence. So everything they're learning, they're having to do it in the workplace and then put that evidence into the portfolio, so that when they get to endpoint they can say, oh, I've done it, here it is, this is what I did, this is how I did it. So that's sort of how that off the job time will work.
So is there an age limit, Kim, on who can?
Absolutely not. No, as I said, I've taken a lady in her 60s onto the paralegal program, and obviously when you're upskilling, any age is absolutely fine.
So it's from 16 to as young as you feel.
Yes.
And we talked about obviously what happens if an employee or an apprentice decides it isn't for them.
Yeah.
Obviously, you talked about the sort of the monthly drawdown. What about things, for example, if an apprentice or a member of staff becomes pregnant and takes a period of maternity leave or sick leave?
Yes, exactly the same. Sick leave, maternity leave, we would instigate what we call a break in learning. So it will be agreed by all parties. We'll basically stop the apprenticeship at that point and agree that in 6 months, a year's time, the apprenticeship will start again. So all funds will obviously not be drawn down. The student won't be in learning for that period of time. It will be a break. But then when they come back into work after maternity break, they pick up from where they started off. So a break in learning is absolutely fine, but it needs to be for a say a proper reason, but it can't just be because they want to go to the States for a month. It needs to be like you say, sickness, maternity,
leave, etc.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So we've talked a lot about obviously the expectations on the apprentice, with regards to being, they need to be have that organizational skills, because they've got to obviously, fit their work in with their study and, keeping the portfolio, the dossier of obviously what they've done. What are the expectations on the employer in an apprenticeship relationship?
Yeah, the engagement with the employer is really important. The best apprenticeships are a real tight collaboration between us as the training provider, the employer and the student. So the employer is really instrumental at the beginning of an apprenticeship. So getting involved in what we call an enrolment meeting, which would be talking about the skills gap, setting objectives. And then every 12 weeks, the student, our coach and the employer will come together in a full review meeting. So that's an opportunity to see what's been happening in the last 12 weeks, plan what's coming in the next 12 weeks. And it's really important at that meeting that the employer can see the sorts of things that the student's getting involved in, so they can give them the opportunity to get involved in that in their day-to-day role, if that makes sense.
So I can imagine, I think it's from kind of just hearing about that, I think what would be useful then is to have somebody designated within an organization who's going to have that sort of mentoring.
Yeah, it really role. Is mentoring.
To make sure, it's not just, not necessarily the line manager, but maybe somebody within an employer's business who's going to have that role, which is, how's it going? What do you need help with? Did you finish that course? What did you get in this, in this particular assessment? So I think there is that kind of, not just the things the employer has to do, but I think there's that mindset, isn't it? That sort of proactive mindset. And obviously, you want this to work. It is an investment in a new recruit or an existing member of staff. So again, you need to, I would imagine, approach it in that kind of positive mindset. We want this to succeed. We want you to succeed. That sort of framing.
Yeah, no, I think mentor is a really good description of the role of that person. It's very much like you say, it doesn't have to be somebody terribly senior, although sometimes it is. For the solicitor program, obviously the qualifying work experience needs to be signed off by a qualified solicitor, but for some of the other programs, it could be somebody they work really closely with. And again, it's an opportunity for their development. Would you like to mentor this apprentice? It's a great opportunity for you to, develop your mentoring skills. And that person is really, like you say, just are you okay? Are you taking your off the job time? That's one of the biggest challenges. Although you might agree that every Tuesday is the day that, Freddie does his apprenticeship work. Most students really are, wanting to make sure that they're getting their job done, and they'll go, I can't today, I'm too busy. So again, the mentor is saying, well, okay, why don't you just take half a day today and we'll move the other half a day to next week. So it is that mentoring role. But it's knowing what they're doing, understanding what they're doing in the workplace as well, so that, and giving feedback. That review meeting is really a chance for the employer to say, well, Freddie, you've done really well in that this week. I still think we could, improve X, Y, and Z skills. So is there anything we can do to support you with that? It's a really nice three-way conversation with the employer, the student, and our coach.
I'm going to sound like a real sixth form student now, because this is what I find they're all obsessed with, is how long is this going to take?
How is it going to take? And again, that's really difficult to say. They're all different depending on the standard. So the business admin is 15 months.
Okay.
The solicitor, depending on whether it's for law graduates, the law graduate solicitor apprenticeship is only 18 months. But the longer form solicitor apprenticeship is 5 years. So again, they really vary depending on obviously the amount of work that sort of needs to take place. An apprenticeship has to be for a minimum of a year and a day. That's the absolute minimum. But most of our apprenticeships are, you know, between 15 months. The management apprenticeships are 20 months. So again, it's difficult and varies depending on the standard.
So if I take a sort of traditional, so, you know, legal route, so that would be a 3-year degree, 1 year at doing your legal practice course, and then you would have 2 years as a trainee solicitor within, you know, working in a law firm. It's only at that point, you know, you are owning a salary. So, you know, what's that, sort of 6 years. How would the kind of the solicitor apprenticeship kind of fit with that sort of traditional 6-year route to qualify? And then at that point, obviously you qualify.
Yeah, there are 2 routes. So one would be, we talked about developing your staff. So there is a solicitor apprenticeship available for law graduates. So I don't know how familiar you are with SQE, Emma, but obviously the LPC is disappearing and SQE is coming in. So that apprenticeship would be right for any student who has a law degree or the GDL or level 6 at SILEX who wants to cross qualify as a solicitor, and that's an 18-month program. So we're looking for students to come to that who've, you know, been in practice for at least 6 months, so they've got their 2 years QWE. So that's for your development for your existing staff. If they have the LPC, they wouldn't be eligible for the apprenticeship, and that's because all they would need is SQE2, and that's not long enough for an apprenticeship, so it would be less than the year and a day that I talked about. The longer route, so this would be for your A-level leavers, would see them on a 5-year journey. They would undertake the paralegal apprenticeship first, which is a 21-month programme, and then join our 3-year solicitor apprenticeship.
Oh, great, thank you.
So still really, like you say, comparable to law degree LPC, you know, exactly. But actually they're in practice, they're learning, they're earning, they're you know, getting those soft skills right from the get-go.
So the weekly minimum commitment, we talked about that. That's 6 hours, isn't it, a week that needs to be
minimum done. And again, that will vary for some of the standards. So the solicitor program, students would need 8 to 9 hours a week. And again, when can an apprenticeship start? When can that start? So anytime, basically. Because we're not a college, it's not the traditional, you only start in September like colleges and schools. Usually there will be cohorts, so we like to start our students in a group so they have the best experience of that peer-to-peer learning. So depending on the apprenticeship, for business admin, we'll start a cohort every other week. For things like solicitor, it would be twice a year. So again, it depends on the standard, but there will usually be start groups within, you know, a couple of months of each other. So for AAT, there'll be one every couple of months.
Brilliant. Kim, I'm going to put you on the spot here because we've had so many questions, which is absolutely brilliant. Would it be possible to put together a bit of a Q&A? Can we put together a Q&A fact sheet based on these? Because I think we've just got so many that I'm not going to be able to obviously deal with all the questions. So what we'll do is we'll do a Q&A and we'll put that together, and I'll send that out to everybody, and obviously with Kim's details on there, because you know it's been brilliant, and sometimes when you pick these topics you never know, but we've had such fantastic audience participation in this webinar. It's been absolutely fantastic. So Kim, thank you so much. That was really, really helpful. And I think for those of you who are thinking about upskilling your current staff, I didn't even know that was possible. So, I mean, what a brilliant what a brilliant way to be able to, as you completely rightly said, retain our staff. We talk so much, don't we, about not being able to retain our staff, not being able to recruit our staff. And I think you're absolutely right. Learning and development and support is so much a part of that whole employee experience. So I think that's absolutely fundamental. And again, if you aren't doing this, your competitors will be. So it does seem like a real kind of win-win, which is fantastic. And I do think around that whole kind of, diversity, I think there's a whole kind of, we can be championing individuals who've come through different routes, different pathways. And I think, school leavers are looking a lot more favourably at apprenticeship schemes because it gives them what they want and potentially more. So I can see, real pluses there as well. Any changes or anything that you know about on the horizon? Is this something where you think there's going to be some sort of government, changes to the schemes or to levies? Or does
Not that we're aware of.
Good. No, watch. Good. That's good to know, because I think it does seem like it's a if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Kind of point. And obviously, we have to think about obviously contracts and legal bits and things like that on top of that. But I think as a kind of a, have a think about it, and see what opportunities there are out there. And I think that's a really good tip. Have a look on the government website. These apprenticeships are written by employers for employers. So hopefully there is something there that works for you and works for your people at whatever stage of their careers or their journeys with you. So we have recorded the session, so I will be sending out the link. So do share that. Do look out for us on LinkedIn. We're having a bit of a break, and we will return in September with our September webinar. So please do look out for invites that we're going to be covering equality and diversity and looking at some of the recent cases and developments in that. So I do hope that you can join us. But again, thank you so much, Kim.
Thank you, Emma.
Have a lovely rest of the day, and thank you very much to everyone who joined us, and I look forward to hearing from you and seeing you very, very soon. So thank you very much indeed, and have a wonderful summer break if I don't speak to you before. Bye-bye.
Bye.